Greetings, friends. I am Dreyfusano, and I welcome you back to day 21 of my vlog every day in April for 2016. Now, for this day, I wanted to sort of discuss my character of Dreyfusano a little bit and how I created it. So, going back to one of those previous days, I had mentioned that when I was in junior high, I created the character of Dreyfus, Dreyfus X, and Dreyfusano as a nickname that because I was under the impression that other friends would give you your nickname, and I didn't want to have a nickname that I didn't want to be stuck with or be unhappy with. So eventually, any games that I started to play over here, over here, that actually required entering in a name, I would do either Dreyfus X, Golden Dreyfus X, or Dreyfusano. Now, I, back in the day, would also used to use AOL chat rooms, and they used to have two AOL RP chat rooms where you could go in, act like a character and everything. I created a young, muscular mage, and I was familiar with the Lord of the Rings series, and I would always see the stereotypical wizards being very weak and very frail and everything. And I thought to myself, why can there not be a muscular mage? Because obviously you have warriors on this side who are really muscular, and then mages on the other side who are really smart, really powerful with their spells and everything, but they're always really frail. So I created my character of Dreyfusano, who is a young, muscular mage, eventually becoming a young, older mage, etc. And I think that's where I sort of started creating my character of Dreyfusano, and there was a concept going around that I didn't know about at the time called Mary Suing, and I'll get to that here a little bit more in a bit, but I think that original character that I had created wasn't really that believable, and I tried to do really, really good things for a lot of other people. I remember in one of my chat rooms, it was like a big castle and everything, and I tried making these pools out of jello and everything. Just your typical kid fantasies. I remember one of my friends that I was interacting with was apparently blind in character, and I tried to heal his sight, but for some reason he didn't want to have his sight actually fixed, and it didn't make sense to me at the time why he didn't want to have it fixed. So I'll get to that. I'll get to the Mary Suing here in a bit. So any games that I would play, I would create either Dreyfusano, Dreyfus X, or GDX, depending on how I could create my name. Then eventually World of Warcraft came around here, and I got my start on Duro 10 and everything, started with Dreyfusano, and then I got into the realm of Kirin Tor and tried to reinvent my character. And then in that character, I'd essentially, this was about end of high school, started college and everything, I started role-playing a little bit in Kirin Tor, and then eventually started creating this story, and I can link it down in the description of my story if you want to read it, of essentially my character came from a different world and everything, and he's trying to rebuild his kingdom. And as an actual mage and everything, he had a healing restorative power. Typically, mages don't have healing restorative powers, which I didn't realize until after I stopped that character. So I think a lot of other people that I had role-played with didn't actually get my character. I did find a couple of friends to RP with, and they actually took me in and actually RP'd with me from time to time. And eventually, they all went their separate ways, and one of those friends that was a friend of one of those friends told me about Warmrest Accord, how the RP there was a lot better. So I didn't necessarily transfer my characters because of money issues, but found Warmrest Accord, tried my Prince character from another world and everything, and eventually I sort of started to learn that that was, again, Mary Sue, or just, it was an unbelievable character. There was a character that I became friends with on Warm Rest Record by the name of Ulf Ganger, I want to say his name was, which was an actual Worgen. And he told me that usually people don't like to be underneath a prince or be less than somebody else. And Mary Suing is its own thing, and he showed me something referred to as an RP litmus test, where you could see, is your character believable or not? I went through it, and then it wasn't necessarily that bad per se, but it was on that borderline of, this is a Mary Sue character. So it was a little bit depressing at the time, but I decided I would just drop the character entirely. So a couple of months would pass by, I'd do a little bit of raiding on my home realm and everything, and then eventually, going back to one of my previous days, I realized something. I realized that I missed doing improv back in comedy sports, and I wanted to continue to do that and still play the game that I like to play a lot. And I decided that after making my music video of Ding, and then going back into the Dead Minds, there was a character in there by the name of Mr. Smite, the black-haired Tauren, that, excuse me, how rude of me. There was a character in there that was a black-haired Tauren by the name of Mr. Smite, and he had a very interesting phrase that he would usually say. He would say, "You landlubbers are tougher than I thought, I'll have to improvise." So that one line right there inspired me to start my improv show called Mr. Smite's Improv. Eventually, I would start role-playing at there's a gazebo behind the Stormwood Cathedral, which I'll put an image up here in a moment. And at that gazebo, I would start doing sort of a one-man show of improv, and I would take some of my improv games that I learned from comedy sports and implement them in there, and make my own little tweaks here and there to make it more specific to me. And then with this show in and of itself, it was pretty interesting how a lot of people were starting to notice that this concept I had was really different, and just they really liked seeing it. And obviously, I imagined that I wasn't going to be a Markiplier or a Tobuscus or a PewDiePie anytime soon with this whole concept. So I imagine a lot of my shows were going to be hit and miss. There was one specific show that I remember where there are characters in the game referred to as Death Knights, which are actually undead characters. And they can essentially be the whole stereotypical death and decay characters and everything. But what happened was that on one side of the benches of the audience were just like, I want to say 9 to 10 Death Knights and everything, and there was one pink-haired gnome off to the left. So usually with my improv games too, I go to the audience, get some suggestions for jokes, and then I would do my jokes according to whatever game I played. Now, it didn't really work out with that particular show because a lot of the Death Knights were just giving your stereotypical death, decay, and sadness and scroll suggestions. Now, that can really only work for more Halloween or Hallows End type shows, so regardless, that show did not go over that well. That is, with one exception. The pink-haired gnome that I mentioned over here, that one person actually gave me a lot of good suggestions. And that's one show I'll definitely remember to actually get me onto the road of wherever it is I'm going. So with this show here too, I had sort of decided that I felt like I wanted to give Warm Rest Record something iconic, that it can be known for something really, really cool, and that's my improv show right here, Mr. Smite's Improv. So, eventually, still did my one-man show every Friday or Saturday, barring any in real life situations or anything. But eventually, I was continuing to do my show here and there. Some had a lot of audience members, some didn't. And eventually I was starting to do a game where I would sort of fake sing to a character and refer to them as a legend. And I specifically remember a character that I gave the title of, it was the Medium of No Equal, I think was the title. And this character was so impressed that she had done some improv in the past. And eventually I found her character in one of the taverns, and even though I was just really, really tired, she and I exchanged water puns for about a good hour to 45 minutes afterwards. And eventually I came to know her as Swordinary, my second mate, or one of my officers in my sort of unofficial guild that I've formed. Eventually she introduced me to one of my other second mates by the name of Aladra. And the three of us just had a lot of fun together, just improvising when the three of us were together. We had even practiced a couple of games, which one was Party Quirks, where one person guesses some quirks of the other two people, and one's like a Murloc, and another's like Illidan or something. And I don't remember all the specifics, but Aladra had actually had this quirk of something having to do with being scared of the number 8. And she actually dropped a lot of hints and like was saying something like, I'm always here between 7 and 9, and other things like that. During this practice, I could not get whatever it is her suggestion was. And I was not necessarily in the mindset that I needed to be in, but I was just going off the wall here and saying things like, you're a librarian, you're a stomach, you're things like that. And honestly, that was probably one of the funnest nights we actually had, because Swordinary was saying, I'm just rolling on the floor laughing. I cannot, I'm just laughing so much. And of course, it was one of those you had to be there sort of situations, but I think coming full circle here, I'm glad that I stopped doing my Prince character. And I'm not necessarily giving it up per se, but I honestly enjoy improvising a lot more because it's more realistic. And I feel like I've sort of attained a sort of celebrity status on Warmaster Cord, sort of. I'm not necessarily the sort of person to have a big ego or anything, but a lot of people have come by me and said thank you for doing the show and everything, and that really makes it all worth it. One thing I didn't mention too is that for anyone that actually gives me a suggestion, I usually hand out prizes, which is usually a couple of 16-slot bags, a couple of pets, and maybe some gold here and there if the volunteers I get usually make it worth my while. So usually if I get somebody to sing a song to, I do a game called Hey Waiter, where I have a customer, and that's a game you'd have to see. But I think that's pretty much it. So I think I'm going to be role-playing for quite some time, and I'm probably going to be using this to advertise this YouTube channel of mine, so that I can go back and forth and just have a lot of fun. So I think that's going to be it for right now for day 21 of Vlog Every Day in April. This is Dry Fasano. Until next time for 2016, be you.